Welcome back to the channel. This is Trinity Storm and you are watching 7th part of What If Naruto Was Denied to be a ninja but still overpowered. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Most people who saw Deku get rid of all of his weight seals would say it was like seeing the calm before a storm. The ground around Deku rose up, and then it started to move around him, first slowly and calmly, and then like a tornado. Itachi said something that made Rai laugh, so she barely had time to brace herself before Daku's shoulder tackled her, making it look like she had vanished in a small crackle of lightning. Where the hell did she go? Did she run out on us? That pussy-licking, dick-sucking Kakuzu smacked the back of Hidan's head. What the hell was that for, you heathen-ass worshipper? She's busy, you idiot, the other Akatsuki members said as more of Naruto's close friends came after them. With Rai and Deku. The lightning user gritted her teeth and started throwing lightning-charged punches at Daku's back. They were moving so fast that neither foot was touching the ground, and the trees they hit were being cut down, leaving a path of destruction behind them. With each blow, the dark shadow grunted, and Rai huffed as her back kept hitting trees and rocks and breaking through them. Until she built up her huge, gauntlet fist-covered blow and smashed it like an axe on the back of her fast opponent. This did stop him, but when she fell back to catch her breath, Deku got up and went after her. They fought in lightning-fast nin taijutsu. Rai, with lightning in her eyes and fire in Daku's, caught a fist in her iron grip but had to let go when a knee went for her stomach. She spun quickly on her metal boots, but Deku countered with his own raised leg. They fought blow for blow and kick for kick, getting faster and faster, but neither of them showed any signs of stopping anytime soon. As Rai roared and blood-red fire flared up around Deku, arcs of lightning wrapped around her body. Their blows kept hitting each other and being blocked or countered. Rai saw a snap kick coming and swept Daku's legs out from under him. The fire-covered shadow creature flipped over, but a lightning-covered gauntlet hit him in the chest as he stood up. He lost his balance and fell across the grove, but he got back up in time to run back and punch Rai in the face. You are much faster than I thought, Deku-san, the woman with white, frizzy hair said to her opponent covered in fire. Or is it that you are moving slower than before, Rai-san? It will take a lot more than that to hurt me, she said as a right hook hit her in the neck. She slammed her fists together, and lightning exploded all around her. Deku jumped backwards to get away from the tendrils when they reached his feet. The dark shadow moved back and forth across a hand seals. Fire release. Mystical dragon fire, he said. He took a deep breath and blew a firestorm out of his mouth, which was covered by his turban. The chakra creature roared after her. The woman flipped away from the fire twice, but the third time Deku exploded from the dragon's mouth and smashed his fist into her unprotected chest, burning her Akatsuki cloak until it reached her undershirt and iron mesh armor, which were protecting her chest. She was thrown across the clearing by the blow, and Deku went after her quickly. The woman smiled and was impressed by his plan. She got to her feet and spun over the dark shadow just as his fiery punch went under her and barely touched her curly hair. She landed on her hands and spun with her legs open, making a vortex of lightning that moved towards Deku. The fast-moving attack washed over the dark creature and spit him out of the top. The crackling energy tornado came to a stop, and the confidently standing woman was revealed. She frowned when Deku turned around before crashing into the ground. As one, they started moving through a series of hand seals and shouting their attacks at the same time. Fire release. The Mystic Fire Dragon. Lightning release. The Mystic Lightning Dragon. Their elemental dragons flew out of them and roared at each other. Itachi stared at Mole calmly, and she stared back at his chin. What shall I call you, Kanochi-san? He asked. Kisame had been separated from him by a knee kick from Zabuza, and the Demon of the Mist ran after his fellow swordsman. Mole is what my master calls me. Nice name, he said sarcastically, which was unusual for him. It comes with the reputation, she said right away. What is that? She slowly took off her mole mask and set it on the ground. She took her wave forehead protector out of her kunai pouch and slowly tied it around her eyes. She then took her tanto out of its sheath on her left thigh and said, I can fight without my eyes. She took her signature stance, crouching on the ground like a tiger and holding her tanto in her right hand with a reverse grip. Itachi took a loose Uchiha taijutsu stance and said, brave words. Do you really know who I am? She gripped her weapon tightly and said, the real question is, and the hairs on the back of her neck stood up, ready to warn her, do you know who I am? Itachi jumped out of the way and brought his leg down for a quick axe kick to her neck to end the fight. But she used the flat side of her weapon to block the strong attack and wrapped her legs around his leg, running over his body and bringing his head down to the ground. The Itachi exploded into chakra smoke. Her neck hair twitched to the left, and she slid out of the way of another Itachi shadow clone that exploded out of the ground, keeping her strong tiger-like stance. She kicked the clone in the chest like a donkey and felt a hard kick hit her side. She fell to the ground and dodged a fist that hit the ground. Mole held up the ram hand seal and slashed in the general direction of 3 Itachi clones. Her ribs hurt from the effort, but a sharp water blade shot out and zipped to them. The clones flipped over the strike, and Mole jumped to meet them. She threw a fist at a clone with a Sharingan, but it was blocked. She then used the clone's momentum to smash her heel into its forehead, which destroyed it. Before another clone could sneak up on her, the Black Ops member landed on the ground and stabbed the ground, which got rid of it. She put her palm on the ground and sent out a short, fast pulse. When she found what she was looking for, she smiled without being seen. The last clone ran towards her, and she ran after it. A fist went for her chin, but she leaned away just in time for the blow to miss her head, and she darted forward, away from the clone. Mole then shoulder-checked a tree, and Itachi came to life with wide-open Sharingan eyes. The S-rank Junin kneed her in the stomach and drove his elbow into her neck, but she fell into the water. They were surrounded by a scary mist, and Itachi actually cursed quietly. He saw the female dark ninja sitting on a branch above him, but they were hidden by the mist. It looked like the fight between Zabuza and Kisame was getting worse and worse. Hidan yelled, "Get me out of here, you heathen fuck!" as ice slowly crept up his body and froze him in place. Haku poked the 3-pronged scythe on the ground with his toe after freezing the Jashin priest with a jutsu. The man yelled out in anger and moved his neck to get some air, but the ice was now up to his chin. "Jashin-sama will punish you all. When I get out of this, I'm going to kill you all and use you as sacrifices," he said, but the ice covered his mouth. "Neat trick, kid," Kakuzu said, crossing his arms. Haku killed half of the zombie brothers with a single attack. He's an ice release user, and I've never seen one of those guys beat before. I heard that they had died out. Haku said, "Thank you," and then he adjusted his hunter ninja mask. Hidan, who was laughing madly with his mouth wide open, froze in place. The demon brothers stood behind the person who used ice release. Their barbed chain was still connected between them, but it hadn't been used yet. "What do you 3 want to do to me? I'm better than you." "To protect Naruto-sama," Haku said as an ice spike grew out of his hand and a light mist surrounded them. Kakuzu could still see through the mist, but it was enough to make both sides cautious. Haku was Zabuza's apprentice, and the demon brothers were the swordsman's allies, so they were used to fighting when they couldn't see. Kakuzu loosened his crossed arms a little. As the fog got thicker, the man slouched down and strained his ears to hear the faintest whistle. He squinted and slowly moved in a tight circle while looking around. At that moment, he hopped away from a rain of ice senbon that was coming out of the mist. He flipped through a set of hand seals that said, "Wind release, great breakthrough." He then blew a huge gust of wind out of his mouth, which cleared the mist. Only to find out that he was trapped in an ice dome with hundreds of Haku and demon brothers looking down at him. "Shit," he muttered, and he threw off his Akatsuki robe just as the ice senbon rain and poison kunai started to fall on him. Naruto moved to the right to avoid a flock of claybirds that exploded. "You want a taste of my art, Un? Eat it." Daidara yelled from his flapping clay dragon as he shoved more clay into his handmouths and spat out more clay birds. Naruto clamped his teeth together and rolled in a tight circle as a tail hit his iron bubble. He was able to get the 2 of them far away from Wave, but they were still inside the alarm barrier, so they were still fighting above water. He turned around on his seal board and opened his left palm towards the birds that were exploding. He flicked through 4 one-hand seals, then said, "Whirlpool style, final world seal." A white vortex of wind came out of a large seal in the middle of his palm and ate the birds. He then said, "You like bombs? Eat it." And threw his left hand at the flying pair, causing fire paper bombs to fly out. He then said, the crazy bomber smiled and laughed as the attack came towards him. "Get us out of the way," Sasori grunted from inside his Hiriko armor. Daidara agreed and told his dragon to fly as fast as it could away from the mutated bird bombs. "Hurry," the Suna ninja who had gone missing said in a strangely calm voice. "It's going as fast as it can, Sasori Dana," he said, but the bombs kept coming no matter how he moved the dragon, until Sasori got tired of it and jumped at Naruto. The blonde seal master just stared blankly at the puppet armor as it ran up to the flocks of exploding birds. The birds exploded a little when they hit the puppet armor, but they were far enough away that Sasori wasn't hurt too much. The older man threw his tail at Naruto, so the boy put on his square armor to protect himself. He also cut the connection to his bombs, but before he did that, he tied all of the wires that went to the paper clay birds together and pushed them towards Deidara. When the crazy bomber turned around to see what his boss had done, he was surprised, so he was hit with a number of blows at once. As Hiriko fell into the water, Naruto dove after it on his board. The puppet armor opened its mouth and fired poison senbon after poison senbon at the seal master. The boy moved out of the way and slammed his palm down at Sasori, saying, "Wind release, gale palm." The wind attack hit the puppet armor, and the man hit the water hard and much faster than he had been falling. Naruto hovered over the splash zone, keeping his guard up so that if he had survived the explosion, Deidara wouldn't catch him by surprise. He did a back flip off his seal board as a puppet shot out of the water and hit it with sharp, black sand, breaking it. Naruto landed on the water without making any ripples. "So the reports were right, you do have the third case cage," he said. Sasori got out of the water and stood on it. "Hi, he is one of my proudest creations," he said. Naruto stood still and quiet for a minute, staring at the user of iron sand. "I'm guessing you have more human puppets," he asked. "Hundreds." Naruto tapped the side of his glasses, and a full chakra frame of the case cage and Sasori came into clear view. He saw that Sasori was getting his own chakra from a central point and putting it into the iron sand using a puppet, instead of the usual 8 points. He jumped back as iron sand came up out of the water in front of him and 2 shadow clones exploded into life next to him. Deidara yelled, "Don't forget about me, as he landed on the water from the sky. His Akatsuki robes were burned on the torso, but his battle clothes weren't too bad. The iron sand puppet rushed forward as the bomber put clay from his pockets on his mouth palms. The 3 Narutos ran forward without fear, and when iron sand covered one of them, the other jumped high into the air and yelled, "Water release, great water typhoon." As rough water crashed down on them, iron sand protected them both. This made the water unstable and threw Deidara off her game. "Keep it steady, will you?" He grunted as he started making something big out of clay. The iron sand rose into the air and spread out until it was like a platform for Sasori and his partner to stand on. At the surface of the water, the real Naruto was busy dodging the iron sand coming out of the case cage's mouth and clanging his shield against it. As Naruto ran full speed towards the man, sharp spikes kept coming at him. 4 more clones came to life next to him, and he was hit with the memory of the clone fighting Sasori and Deidara being thrown out. 2 clones increased the flow of chakra to their legs, rocketed high into the air, and landed on the flying black iron platform. This distracted the bomber from making whatever he was making, even though it was already starting to take shape. Naruto had an idea. He ran away from a sharp metal attack that would have cut off his head and charged up his chakra beam seal. As he skidded on his knees, he dipped his fingers into the water and said, "Water release, chakra beam." Water grabbed onto his biceps and he opened his palms. Right under the iron sand puppet, a sharp drill shot out of the water and went after it. The attack bent and moved away from the metal sand, reforming as soon as it had been cut in half, until the puppet covered his whole body with iron sand. "Got you." Naruto mumbled and charged a seal on his pinky finger, and a piece of paper went through the attacking water beam that still hadn't broken the defense. When the paper stuck to the side of the armor, a hazy blue bubble formed around the puppet, and it fell out of the sky. When Naruto heard about the duo's skills, he didn't just sit around. When he had time, he went to his personal library in the leader's tower and started making seals on how to stop a puppet master. He had used the seal to cut off his connection to the puppet master and cover the puppet with a blue bubble of his own chakra. Sasori could no longer control the case cage puppet. It splashed into the water and sank to the bottom, with Naruto's hazy blue seal still on it. Naruto had used a level 10 containment steel and made it stronger by adding a barrier seal to keep out the puppet master and a broken blood seal. For Sasori, it was like trying to find a signal underground and having trouble or not being able to find it at all. He felt his clones disappear and watched as the floating iron sand started to fall around him. Deidara and Sasori landed on the water. "Strange that I lost control of my puppet," he said, noticing that Naruto had water on his arm and his palm was open. "I wish I could kill you," he said, throwing off his robe to show his bare torso and the cylinder-shaped part of his chest that said, Heart. He put his hands together and shot water at Naruto. The boy ran away from the attacks in a straight line. I've got you, Naruto grunted as a huge bird with a big head and 3 horns crashed into his shield. More clay bombs came after his body, which was in the air, and Naruto had to work hard to avoid them. They looked like big eagles without feathers, with bullhorns and a rectangular forehead. Naruto's legs were covered by a small blue dome as he jumped over one. The water on his arm was still connected to the sea, and he reached out with his left hand to a clay beast. The clay beast exploded, and Naruto was in the blast range. The water that followed him back into the water fell back into it in a sloppy way. As a person fell from the blast zone, everyone stopped talking. Sasori flew to catch the Jinchuriki. His wings looked like a fan and helped him get off the water. As he caught Naruto, he pushed the tubes that shot water back into the holes, but Naruto's eyes slowly got bigger. Kaboom! Zabuza and Kisame flew through the fog and hit each other with their weapons, jumping away and then running back. Kisame and his former teammate got into a fast-paced kenjutsu fight, and a ground-shaking explosion threw them off for a moment. The shark man laughed at Zabuza, and the other man smiled. They both Spartan kicked each other away at the same time. Seeing from the corner of their eyes that Kakuzu was fighting Haku and the Demon Brothers. Haku turned a fire jutsu from a fire mask upside down and used the thick fog around him to call up a rain of ice senbon without saying a word. The attack flew towards the mask, but the earth mask got there in time to build a wall of mud. The person who could release ice twisted a spear of ice in his fingers and ran to the dome. At the same time, the Demon Brothers used their great teamwork to fight Kakuzu, who had no masks on. Black tendrils shot up from the ground to stab a brother, but another brother pulled out a kunai, spun it by its ring, and put water chakra into it, shredding the tendrils when they hit them. The other brother picked up his half of the spike chain and yelled, "Sick poison darts." The spikes shot out and hit the shinobi without a mask, making him pull back his black tendrils and try to avoid them instead. When he felt his water mask dying, he cursed. He ran to where he felt the death, and the Demon Brothers followed. Itachi hissed and held his hand up to his left eye while fighting with a kunai against a woman who was surprisingly strong. He thought he could beat her quickly, but she was hacking and stabbing him without mercy. When he turned his eyes again to try to guess what she would do next, he hissed and felt like his eyes had been dropped into pots of oil. Mole had already used Naruto's still experimental Death Sharingan seal, but it didn't work very well. Itachi couldn't use his pinwheel eyes to predict, copy, or control her with a Sharingan-based genjutsu. Itachi's eyes would hurt the most if he tried to spin his Sharingan. This was because something that looked like a black ink spider was stuck on his neck and wouldn't let go. The deputy commander wasn't completely safe. She had burn marks on her exposed arm, and the leg of her left pant was cut off at the knee. She had a long, thin, bloody cut that went from the bottom of her right eye, which was covered, all the way down her cheek to her chin. Itachi dodged the blow and stuck his kunai into her thigh as she turned on her heels. She grunted and flipped away from him several times. The Uchiha did a series of hand seals that said, "Fire release, great fireball." She pulled the weapon out of her leg and ran away as he attacked. As she ran back to Itachi, she threw her tanto at him, and just as he caught it, she put her palm out in front of him, and a seal lit up. "Unseal," said Frog, and he shot out of the seal and hit the Uchiha in the face with a punch that shook the ground. Both members of Black Ops vanished into the fog after their opponent. Daku used his arms to grab Rei's shin, but then he was shocked. The fire around him got even bigger, and it was clear that it was fighting with her lightning. She moved her leg back, and they both landed right hooks on each other. They kept flipping sideways and zipping back to each other, while Zabuza and Kisame flew past them and back into the mist. Daku dodged a hard left hook and hit her in the chin with a vicious uppercut. The blow lifted her off the ground, but when she got back up, the lightning got stronger. Her robe melted away, revealing her usual battle gear, a white shirt with short sleeves, a long-sleeved mesh armor shirt underneath and tight white shinobi trousers. Her silver metal gauntlets, gloves, and boots were still on, and the little light that got through the mist made them shine. Rai and Daku started to charge up their bodies. The lightning that was covering Rei's body now merged with her skin, turning her body into lightning. The fire that was around Daku also merged with him, turning him into fire. The fighters yelled at each other and flashed their weapons. While Naruto was jumping from deformed Claybird to deformed Claybird with blue bubbles on his feet to get closer to Deidara, Sasori's broken puppet body started to come back together. Naruto looked over his shoulder and saw that the birds were going back to their summoner. He held the older blonde down with a vicious uppercut with his left hand and drove his knee into her chest. Deidara was shocked by how Naruto blocked his attack and knocked him out of breath. Then he felt Naruto slap him on the back, and silver snake ropes shot out of his sleeves and tied the gasping man up, sucking his chakra and making him sink into the water like a rock. Naruto didn't care what happened to Deidara. After his last move, an angry blast of fire was stopped by the iron bubble on his back. He bit his teeth together as he tried to stay put, but Sasori wasn't done. Red secret technique. 100 puppets on stage. The missing ninja from Suna yelled as hundreds of puppets with red cloaks flew around Naruto. The boy took his usual armadillo fighting stance, with his right hand stretched out towards Sasori and his left hand on his right elbow. His legs were also in a ready position. The water on his right arm slithered back into the chakra beam seal, and a sword made of water that was 4.5 feet long came out. It wasn't made with a lot of detail, but the lizard on the handle stood out. The blonde boy took a basic kenjutsu stance, with his sword pointing down and both hands on the handle. "Give up, child," he said, "I have used this technique to take over a country. What can you do to stop it?" Naruto was out of breath. His eyes were on his main opponent, but he could also feel the puppets flying around him. "I have done more than anyone thought I could. I've been told I'm weak and that I'll never be a ninja." As he spoke, his limp blonde hair covered his eyes. "I've been through hell to get everything I have, and no one is going to put me down," he growled. "Ever. Again." "So be it," Sasori said, since Naruto was going to die anyway. And when Blonde the Seal Master said the last word, red-cloaked puppets started falling on him. Frog grabbed Mole's outstretched hand as Itachi used an earth jutsu to open a chasm. The deputy Black Ops ninja was pulled out of danger and thrown to the desperate Uchiha. He was always in a lot of pain when he tried to use his Sharingan, which caused both of his eyes to bleed heavily. The man was taking deep breaths until Mole hit him in the head with her knee. He fell to the ground because he was too tired to stand up any longer. The woman quickly put a restraint seal on him and tied him up with silver ropes. Itachi just closed his eyes and gave in to the darkness and pain of having his chakra taken away from him against his will. The two of them could feel the air getting thicker, which meant that Haku was about to use his chakra high seal. Kakuzu kicked Haku in the shoulder, then used his elbow to hit him in the head. Haku had to slide back as the Demon Brothers, who were very hurt, fell next to him. The fight zone was a mess, with broken masks and black threads that were twitching all over. The three of them had destroyed all of the man's elemental masks, but they still had to deal with an angry S-rank ninja. Kakuzu spit out some black threads, which went straight for a sleepy Haku, but a demon brother pulled him away just in time. The man asked Haku, "Don't you think it's time to use it?" "Hi, it is," the boy said as he held up the monkey hand seal. The air around him got thicker, and a ghostly image appeared behind him from the mist. It looked like what you might think a Shinigami would look like, with the horrifying mask and all, but the ghost slowly turned into a real thing as the ice around it cracked and creaked. In the meantime, the Haku stood calmly in front of the ice monster, which was 3 times taller than him. It had a short-bladed knife in its right hand, and the left pointer finger of its left hand was on Haku's shoulder. The mosk's mouth opened with a groan, and ice snakes slithered towards Kakuzu. To get ready, the S-rank ninja had been pulling black threads out of every hole in his body. When the snakes bit Kakuzu, the threads turned to ice. Kakuzu broke the threads and ran to Haku. The person who used ice release smiled wider, feeling at peace with the world, and pushed his right palm towards his opponent. As more ice snakes grew out of the mist around the man, he had to keep cutting his threads because more and more snakes were freezing it. Worst of all, every time he hit one of the snakes, he felt his body freeze up. He flipped through a set of hand seals that said, "Fire release, drilling fire bullets." This attack broke the snakes as soon as it hit them, but as each one fell, more snakes came out of the mist to replace it. Because he was focused on something else, he didn't see the phantom ice monster behind Haku reach out with his short knife and stab Kakuzu. The ninja looked up in time and grabbed the knife's edge before it hit him. He grunted as ice slowly crept down his arms and formed around him. Haku told the hand to pull back a little, and then he used the short knife to cleanly cut off the man's head. Naruto was crazy about blondes. He cut, hacked, slashed, sliced, diced, and destroyed the puppets that moved down to him. He turned in a tight circle with his sword outstretched, which caused the water to spike up and form a sharp dome. He let out a loud roar and pushed the dome away, sending a lot of puppets flying with it. He ran as fast as he could to Sasori and stuck his sword through a puppet that was trying to attack him from the water. He pulled his weapon out and jumped over two short puppets holding scythes. He yelled and brought his weapon down on them. He instinctively raised his left forearm and square shield to block a blow to the head. He put all of his strength into his sword hand and punched the inside of his shield with his right fist. He blew some air out of his nose and punched his shield again. More harsh vibrations reverberated through a group of approaching puppets, stunning them enough for him to make a slashing motion towards them. A wave of water washed over them and pushed them under the water, where the pressure crushed them. The boy panted and looked around until he had an idea. He pointed his water blade at Sasori, and it shot out of his hand. The puppet master deflected the boy's blade with a blade that came out of his puppet arm. Naruto, on the other hand, was busy flashing through his hand seals. When he said, "Ninja art, Fuinjutsu, sea of paper chaos," both of his arms flew out and hundreds of thousands of pieces of paper flew out, spinning around him before they grew and stayed still in the air. Sasori watched the boy with interest to see what he was going to do. He still had about 50 puppets and was at full strength. Naruto kept his arms outstretched and his palms open. His fingers twitched, and the smoke issue ninja wire made the paper grow around them and cover Sasori as well. The man looked around and was about to jump away from the papers when he ran into a hazy blue force field. He quickly changed into a puppet when he felt a different kind of chakra enter his wooden body. Naruto dropped his arms, and his chakra beam seal flickered. Lightning shot out of it, and he pointed it at the puppet master and said, "You're in my world, Sasori-san." The paper seals buzzed with energy at what he said, and the chakra strings connecting the puppets wavered and went off. The puppets around them fell into the water. Sasori's situation got worse quickly, so he took 2 more puppets out of his arm and sent them to Naruto. The boy ran up to them and whipped his lightning-covered arm at them. A lightning whip lashed out at the 2 of them, and Sasori once again lost control. The blonde kept running to the older man but stopped halfway and jammed his arm into the water. When arcs and tendrils of lightning smashed him into the hazy seal wall behind him, the S-rank puppet master lost control of his limbs. Naruto flashed in front of him and put his arm, which was covered in water, through the heart seal. Sasori's eyes slowly got bigger as he realized what had just happened. Naruto made sure to look the shocked man straight in the eyes. The tense air around them calmed down, but the seals stayed in the air. The man with the red head slowly leaned against Naruto's arm and whispered, "I have some information that will help you a lot," he said. "Orochimaru has made a shinobi whose only goal is to kill you." His voice was getting quieter. "My source says there is going to be another attack on Wave. With Iwa. In your good luck, Naruto-sama." The leader of the Wave nodded to show that he knew the S-rank puppet master had said that he was better than him. He pulled his arm out of the dead puppet master's heart and let the man sink into the water. Sasori smiled at him peacefully, even though his face was made of wood. As the man sank into his watery grave, he knew he was going to die soon. Naruto shut his eyes, looked up, and took a deep breath before slowly letting it out. He had just beaten 2 S-rank ninja who were on the run. Then he thought about what the last person he had killed had said, that Orochimaru still hated him for helping his teammates make him run away. Naruto didn't know why the Snake Sannin was going after him and not his other Sannin team members, but he was ready for him. "Naruto-sensei." Naruto turned to see who was calling his name and smiled when he saw it was Yakumo. Hinata and Sasuke were running behind her. Konoha and the other villages that were friends with Wave had heard about the invasion late. The brown-haired girl ran up to him and looked him over with worried eyes, but he told her, "I'm fine." They watched as Dark Ninja carried an angry Hidan in a tight container that didn't even let him move his neck. A frustrated baboon-masked ninja even stuffed Hidan's mouth with a rag because he was tired of hearing the priest's creative curses. Itachi came next in a chakra cage that looked a lot like Hidan's. Deidara's unconscious body was brought in on a stretcher with restraint seals all over it. Finally, Sasori's dead puppet body and Kakuzu's headless body and head were also brought in on stretchers. He had already put a seal on all of Sasori's puppets and planned to give them to Kankuro, the Cage's brother and the only puppet master he knew. But Kisame and Rai couldn't be found. Instead, they were bringing Zabuza in on a stretcher. He was hurt, but he still had a big smile on his bandaged face, which made Naruto laugh. Sorry we couldn't get here on time, Sensei, Hinata muttered. There's nothing to be sorry about, he said as he walked to where the barrier seals in Outer Wave were, near the main gate, and looked at it. When he saw that it was now fully back online, he gave himself a nod. "Hiya Gaki!" yelled Jiraiya, but Tsunade hit the man on the head. I mean Naruto-sama, he said as he rubbed his head and pouted. How's it going, Naruto? You look like crap, the blonde woman said with a smirk. Naruto slowly returned the smirk and looked over his body. His blue Junin flak jacket had cuts and soot all over it, his sleeves were torn off by something he couldn't even remember, he was missing half of his left sandal, part of his hair was black from soot and he had a purple bruise on his cheek from something else he couldn't even remember. The only thing that was still in one piece was his black ninja pants. Thank you very much, Tsunade. He replied sarcastically, you look really old today. Mole jumped down to his side and whispered something in his ear. He shook his head and whispered something back. She saluted and went away. I'll get you back, Naruto, she said with a smile. When a Chunin Hoshi gatekeeper gave Naruto a clipboard, she raised her eyebrows and asked, something wrong? The people who had been in the bunker were now slowly leaving and going back to their normal lives. He hummed and bit the end of his pen. Kisame and Rai got away, but they were very hurt. Also, my alarm seals found 2 more hidden watchers. I can guess what they were wearing even though there is no description. Now I'm thinking about putting that cursing idiot into a deep, irreversible stasis and killing Itachi Uchiha. How do you feel? About Itachi, we need to talk, she whispered to Naruto so Sasuke wouldn't hear. But as far as they knew, Sasuke was busy watching his older brother get taken away in a seal cage like a criminal. Naruto stared at him for a minute before putting his hand on the shoulder of the boy with black hair. Why don't you guys go wait in my office? I'm sure Tsunami-san will serve some cinnamon rolls, Hinata said as she unconsciously licked her lips and silently dragged the boy and the younger girl with her to the leader's tower. Now, what do you want to tell me about Uchiha Itachi? Deidara's eyes popped open and he groaned. He tried to reach for his head to rub the throbbing pain, but he couldn't move. He fought for a while, but then he realized there was no light in the room and he couldn't move at all. The blonde tried to open the mouths on his palms, but for some strange reason, they wouldn't move, just like his whole body. It was as if he were made of wood. Since the film over his eyes hadn't come off yet, he was only vaguely aware that he was standing on an angled table with his wrists, ankles, thighs, stomach, chest, and neck tied down. Why am I still alive? Why did I look horrified under the other blonde as he sank into the water like a log? He asked himself. He remembered how hard it was to breathe, how the pain from not getting enough oxygen spread from his chest like a flower, and how he was spitting out bubbles of air as he screamed. He shook off the memories and said, hello. After that, he heard a heavy iron door being unlocked and opened. He hissed from the bright light that hit him, and it took him a while to close his eyes. When he did, he cautiously opened them again and found himself back in hellish darkness. There was a clear sound of boots coming towards him. He put on a brave face and got ready to snarl at whoever it was. If he was going to die, he would die with his pride. Someone reached up and pulled a string. A sharp beam of light fell on Deidara's blonde head. He tilted his head down to get away from the light. This person coughed into their hand and then tapped their clipboard with their pen to hold a few pieces of paper in place. The only thing that made the man stand out was his short, half-white, half-black hair that was held in place by a wave forehead protector and a pair of wire-rimmed reflective glasses. The rest of what he was wearing was inky black and blended with the darkness behind him, making him look like a floating head with tanned, sleeveless arms. First, the person said, please be patient, this is just a formality. Then, he cleared his throat and said, you can call me Washiwashi, or Washi for short. What is your name? Like hell you don't know, the crazy bomber screamed, still trying to get his hand-mouths to move, but they didn't. Washi wrote something on his clipboard. I see, he said. How old are you? Taking a page from Hidan's book, he said, fuck off, baring his teeth in defiance. And from where? He asked as he wrote it down. Go sucker a dick. Washi laughed and wrote it down. Alright, let's start over, he said, gently dropping his clipboard somewhere in the darkness next to him. I've been told to get every bit of information from you, whether you give it to me willingly or not. Will you help me? Again, go suck a dick, the crazy bomber said with a smirk as he still couldn't move from his slanted table. Washi laughed quietly and held up a piece of paper with a small seal on it in front of Deidara. He said, you see this seal? It's a creation from Leader Sama called the Truth Seal. Whoever it touches will always be cursed to tell the truth until the he or I remove it. He waved the seal in front of the captive man's face, making him flinch slightly. He loudly cracked his neck and looked over the slanted table Deidara was tied to at the one-way glass far from where the blonde could see it. Then he looked back at the bomber and said, "Let's get started." He took Deidara's face in his hands and covered his eyes, then gave him a hard punch to the stomach and didn't stop until the blonde was wheezing. When he took his hand away, the crazy bomber spat at him, and he had to jump out of the way. Washi shook his head in frustration and reached into the dark for a traditional potato sack, which he used to cover the prisoner's head. He kept punching the blonde in the stomach. When he saw that the blonde's head was falling to his chest, he lifted the sack a little and put 2 small containers of smelling salt into his nose. He then kept punching the poor blonde. After 10 minutes of non-stop punching, Washi gave Deidara a slow grin and dumped a bucket of ice-cold water on his head. Deidara sputtered and coughed. A small drop of blood fell from his mouth, and he shivered. He was dry heaving. When he got a right hook to the face, he threw up blood and mucus. He was gasping for air, and when he got another punch, this time to the other cheek, tears came to his eyes. He squeezed his eyes shut because he didn't want to cry in front of anyone. The next punch was a metal-dusted fist that hit his cheek. His pants hurt, and Washi hadn't even asked his questions yet, which was the worst part. Deidara tried to raise his head and spit blood at his interrogator, but he wasn't able to do it in time to avoid another iron punch to the stomach. He whimpered quietly as tears fell from his eyes, mucus came out of his nose, and blood flowed like a waterfall from his mouth to his neck. Another punch hit his sore belly, and he tried to hunch over, but he couldn't because of the restraints on his neck and the seal restraints on the table. Washi saw that he was trying to bite off his tongue so that he would never have to tell anyone his secrets. He quickly grabbed a pair of tongs from the darkness and held them on the bloody blonde's tongue. He then tightened his grip a bit and waited for Deidara to make a small sob before letting go. Deidara shook his head, trying to get his eyes to open again so he could see clearly. His head swung from side to side, and he grunted when he heard fingers snap in front of him. He vaguely noticed that the smelling salts in his nose weren't working as well as they used to. His tired eyes looked at Washi's wide, toothy smile. "Are you ready to talk now?" he asked. Washi nodded. Either a seal or he would get the information out of him, and then he would die a painful death. The blonde's eyes popped open in a burst of energy, and before he could bite his tongue off, a seal was slapped on his forehead. The kanji for truth was glowing softly. "I like my meat tough, and you, my friend, are tough." First question. What is your name? The Iwa bomber tried hard to keep his mouth shut, but it still flew open. Deidara, he said clearly and smoothly, despite the fact that his eyes were closing and he had purple bruises on his cheeks and chin. Now, was that really so hard? Yes. Behind the blonde victim was a one-way glass where the 6 village leaders who were allies stood. Samsado scratched the back of his head and said, "They don't make them like they used to, huh?" Tu laughed to herself and said, "He's brutal, that's for sure." Naruto shrugged and smiled. Washi-san likes it when his victims are polite. He winced when he saw Deidara get hit in the face again, even though she was telling the Hoshi ninja the truth. "He seems to have some anger issues," he said. "Ya think?" All of them winced again from a punch to the gut, then another. Yumi got herself together again and turned to Naruto, the leader who was closest to her age and also the youngest. "What do you need the Iwa missing ninja for?" she asked. "I need all the help I can get. A group of S-rank ninja can't work without a leader. This leader who sent all of their ninja to capture me must have something against me," he said. It made sense, since Wave had been getting in the way of most of the Akatsuki's business and delaying their goal. Add to that the fact that Naruto was the most well-protected Jinchuriki they had ever met, and all of their plans to take him were useless. Naruto could only imagine how upset this leader was. Tsunade told the blonde seal master that the Uchiha was a spy in the Akatsuki ranks, so he couldn't get all the information he needed from Itachi. Before he could tell Naruto, he would have to tell her. Since 2 days ago, when the Senju took the Uchiha back to Konoha, he was still waiting for a report. For now, they would have to settle for Deidara, especially since Hidan couldn't finish a sentence without throwing in a curse word or 9. It seemed like any blow would make Washi even more angry because the Jushinist seemed to love pain. Now that the Sannin had given him the ominous warning about a shinobi made just to kill him, and he thought that Iwagakure was attacking his village because he was the son of the Yondaime and that the small villages he was allied with weren't strong enough to fight Hidden Rock and Hidden Sound, Naruto's gut feeling was getting worse. A year was a very long time to train someone. Either Orochimaru really wanted to take his time, or Sasori's spy had given a wrong estimate. The blonde leader of Wave would have to choose the second one. As the questioning went on for more than an hour, the leaders started to leave, saying they had to deal with urgent matters. Naruto knew what they were going through. They had to run their own villages, but they didn't want to leave and make him think they were only with him because of his security skills. He also politely nodded and told them they could go back to their village to take care of business. After they left, he called the Hoshi ninja who had been questioning Deidara and told him to write a detailed report and bring it to his office the next morning. Under the leader's tower, there was a complicated network of tunnels and hallways. If you weren't with a guard or Naruto, you would have died trying to find your way out of the maze. Attached to the wall were small white light bulbs that gave off a soft glow. This gave the blonde enough light to walk to another section of underground rooms. He stopped in the same room where he had brought Rat, Mole, and Frog in the first time. There were no tables in the room anymore, and the walls were painted a dull yellow color. He closed the door quietly and locked it to keep people out. Then he sat down in the middle of the room and put his palms together in a meditative pose. Naruto didn't have full control of his Kyuubi chakra, contrary to what most people thought, including Jiraiya. He could only control up to 6 of the tailed beast tails before he went crazy and succumbed to the fox beast's madness, which was different from the raccoon beast's madness because it was thought that the kitsune were born with a controlled madness, while the tanuki went mad from bad experiences, possibly from being tortured. Even though his father was a genius for making his tailed beast containment seal, which allowed his chakra to flow with Kyuubi's and mix with it, making it stronger and more dangerous by the month, both the Jinchuriki and the beast had to work hard to control the strength. Everyone knew that Naruto and Kurama worked together perfectly, like the 8 tails and his Jinchuriki. However, the boy's age was the main thing holding him back when it came to controlling Kyuubi's pure chakra and not the combination of his and Kurama's. Naruto was always changing and growing. He was no longer getting taller, but his bones and muscles were getting stronger and tighter. Most people wouldn't notice at first because he stayed as thinly muscled as he was when he started taijutsu training, but soon his forearms alone would be able to break through trees without their guards on. Kurama said that Naruto would master his chakra when he was 16 years old. Naruto had, of course, changed his seal to keep tailed beasts in. He had directly linked the seal to his chakra beam seal, so it could mix with either his own chakra or at least one of his affinities. He also tried to link Kurama to Daku, but it didn't work very well. The Dark Shadow could only get Kyuubi's chakra if he was within a mile of Naruto. Otherwise, Daku's seal would burn and destroy the Dark Shadow, leaving Naruto to start over with his loyal servant. He had made sure that he and Kurama would both be able to control their chakra. Naruto's last action was to make a store of chakra into which his and Kyuubi's chakra would leak and mix. Kurama was in charge of controlling the volatile mix of chakra because he was the only person who had ever had the most volatile chakra. The idea behind this chakra store was that if Naruto somehow lost all of his chakra, he would still have something even stronger to fall back on. The purple chakra store was his backup source of chakra. It worked the same way as his chakra high seal, but instead of making him happier, it gave him a demonic feeling. If someone saw him break the seal in his room, they would say that he looked like he was one with the fox and that he was very hungry for blood. Kurama had said that Naruto was a perfect example of a Jinchuriki, but he was still only 13 years old and hadn't fully understood the power of the tailed beast in his stomach. So, the child changed the room he was meditating in from an interrogation room to a room where he could practice keeping beast chakra inside of him. The seals in the 4 corners of the room would keep a close eye on his brainwaves. If they saw that he was getting out of hand, wrought iron Jinchuriki restraint chains would shoot out of the corners and hold him down. There were also silencer seals in case he laughed too loudly or suppression seals so no one would see what he was doing. It was the same seal she put around his secret training ground in Konoha when he was teaching Yakumo how to use her beast chakra. Naruto was wearing his battle uniform, except that his arm and leg guards had been made even stronger so they wouldn't get torn up like they did last time. There was silence, and a small amount of red chakra started to bubble on his skin. It got bigger and bigger until a single red tail shot out behind him and connected to his tailbone. His usual limp, dull blonde hair now moved like it was in the wind, and a second tail joined the first. The 2 tails were moving around like they were alive and waving above him. Yes, now hold it like that, Kyuubi grunted, and from inside his seal, he saw a huge tree sitting in the middle of a sea of red chakra. Naruto had stopped the flow of his own blue chakra and let the Kyuubi's flow into the well of chakra. It kind of worked like a dam. There were 4 exits and 2 entrances. Naruto would first open the 4 exits so his chakra could flow out and gather somewhere else, leaving only a tiny drop before the Kyuubi chakra entered and dissolved that drop. Naruto's chakra was usually cleared out after 30 minutes of meditating. The tree was made of seals and not wood, but if you looked closely, you could see different kanji moving up and down the bark and the branches. Since it was on a very small island, the branches hung down and went into the chakra around it. The roots, on the other hand, rose a little bit from the ground but still went into the chakra. The tree was meant to carefully control the flow of chakra and how fast it moved out to Naruto. It had helped Naruto a lot with controlling his own chakra, but he wasn't even close to being perfect. 2 more tails joined the fight, and when Kyuubi touched the tree's trunk, he could feel that it was getting hot. Still, Naruto was in charge. His face was only slightly scrunched up because he was holding his tails still. The seal tree was set on fire when the 6th tail came. Kyuubi kept his hand on them, though, and gave them a hand. Naruto now had teeth that stuck out and a dot on his nose that was supposed to look like the kitsune's nose. More branches that hung over the water dipped into it. Kyuubi watched with interest as it kept sucking his chakra in and spitting it out from the roots, making a cycle. The tree's actions made the storm that was his chakra calm down a bit, but only small waves splashed and bubbled. Naruto got a 7th tail from under him. Kyuubi yelled, "All right, that's enough." And Naruto just barely heard it. He forced 4 of his exit gates to open and breathed a sigh of relief when the demon chakra left him. He breathed an even bigger sigh of relief when his own chakra filled the well. The blonde sighed again as his shoulders sagged. He had never liked training, but his tail beast had told him that it would get easier once he mastered it, just like with taijutsu. Ready to go again? When Naruto nodded, a swirling vortex opened up behind him, and a single gloved hand reached in, grabbed him by the scruff of his neck, and pulled him in. He disappeared as if he had never been there. At the same time, the alarm in his room told Deku and Mole that their master had not left the room, but he was also not there. "Lord Third, do you think it's a good idea to go to war with Wave?" "That country is well guarded and well connected," the 3rd Tsuchikage's son asked quietly as he followed his short father through the village's Anbu training ground, acting as the older man's guard and overseeing the ninjas' training in preparation for the Wave invasion. "My shinobi can handle that tiny village. Wave is allied with Smoke, Fang, Marsh, Chill, Waterfall, Konoha, Suna, and Kiri," the other man said, because 3 villages weren't enough to beat Iwagakure, but 8. His old cage father was still too blind to see that it was a suicide. "I don't care about numbers. I've beaten battalions of Konoha shinobi without breaking a sweat." "So does the Yellow Flash," the son whispered, making sure no one heard him. "That name and the name of the person who had it were forbidden in Hidden Rock. And Wave is led by his son," he added. "Just because they are related doesn't make them equal," Owanoki said, stopping and crossing his arms as he watched his Black Ops shinobi go through intense training. "Yes, but he's only 13, and he's already made a name for himself as an S-ranked ninja," he said. From what they knew about the boy from his time in Konoha, he had killed the one-tailed fox, helped make the snake Sanin run away, made an S-rank attack that only he could use, and led the attack on Hoshigakure. The boy had done so many things, but his father was too stubborn to see that Naruto could just as well have a counter for every possible attack since his village was basically impossible to get into. His father was quiet, but he gave him an angry look. "Do not tell me that you are afraid of that little blonde maggot. I'd be happy to die for Iwa, but what I'm trying to say is, enough already. The leader of the Wave is just too enough," he shouted, and everyone stopped what they were doing to look at him. Owanoki waved his hand to tell them to keep doing what they were doing. Uwatsuchi stepped back in shock, but he kept talking, making sure to be gentle. "You can't keep this grudge in your heart, Tsu-sama. Long ago, Iwa and Kumo destroyed Uzishio, but Wave is friends with Kumo. Naruto offered you a peace offering by telling you about the goals of this S-rank organization, but you turned him down." Owanoki stayed silent, and Yuwa sighed. Here, Owanoki spun around on his feet and levitated so he was at eye level with his tall son. "Minato took away the people I love. He took away your mother, your sister, and your wife," he growled to Yuwa under his breath. Yuwa chose not to say anything and let the man go on. He took away millions of other families, he left children without parents, and he made Iwagakure's name look bad. They were shinobi, Yuwa said with a sharp frown. Yuwa closed his eyes in defeat and said, "No matter what, I won't stop until every Namikaze is dead." The Tsuchikage turned around and flew to his office, leaving Yuwa standing alone. The man shook his head and walked out of the training ground. He stopped suddenly in the middle of a busy market, reached over to a wall to his right, and pulled a girl with brown hair in a chunin flak jacket out from behind it. Under his accusing eyes, the girl nervously scratched the back of his head. "Kuratsuchi, how much did you hear?" She stood up and said, "Everything." She looked to where his grandfather had flown and asked, "Why do you think he is so insistent?" Yuwa looked at her and slowly smiled, realizing that she didn't totally blame Naruto for the fact that she didn't have a mother. Not completely, but it was still better than a year ago, when the mere mention of Naruto, even as a topping for ramen, would send her into a fiery rage. The thing that made him stop and think about her anger was when she heard that Naruto was talking to Kumo and Iwa instead of fighting them. She was also in the room when her Tsuchikage grandfather got a letter telling him the main goal of the S-rank organization. This was the same S-rank organization that Iwa had been using to do shady business all over the elemental nations. Naruto had offered to help him in a roundabout way, and the Tsuchikage took it as an insult. Iwa had a history book, just like every other hidden village, and the Hidden Rock was very proud of crushing Uzushiogakure. Naruto's bad childhood was no longer a secret, and she wondered what would have happened to him if the Hidden Whirlpool hadn't been destroyed. Naruto must not have had anything against lightning or rock, or he would have gone to war with both of them right away. She would have said that he deserved it because of what his father had done, but Naruto wasn't born until many years after the Third Shinobi War, so he wasn't even alive at that time. Plus, she had learned in the academy that a shinobi's life was unstable and uncertain, and Minato had only been doing his job for Hidden Leaf, as horrible as that sounded. Minato didn't like killing people. The Yondaime was known for only fighting back when someone attacked what he was trying to protect, like Naruto did when he attacked Hoshigakure. It was humbling to learn more and more about Naruto Uzumaki's life in Konoha. The blonde boy had turned his sadness and loneliness into fuinjutsu. Most people thought that he learned how to work with seals just to find a place where he could finally feel at peace and try to keep that peace for as long as he could, and Wave was that place. Her grandfather's anger at a person who wasn't even responsible for the massacre was almost without reason. Naruto could have said that his sadness was because of Iwa and Kumo, but he didn't. Even though Kuratsuchi was only 16, she knew when her village was outmatched and that a fight between 2 and 9 or 10 wouldn't be easy or likely to win. Everyone would have thought that the kids were the ones with death wishes and that it was up to the adults to change their minds. However, this was clearly not the case. Yuwa put his hand on his daughter's shoulder and led her through the market to their house. Hatred has taken over his heart. "I only hope he doesn't let it rule," he said. Zetsu was smart and had many skills. As the fight between Wave and Akatsuki went on, he slipped into the village when Kisame broke down the defenses. He didn't waste any time making white copies of Zetsu to sneak around the village and find out as much as they could about it. They weren't allowed in the leader's office, the dark headquarters, or the S-rank part of the library, but they could do anything else. Black Zetsu had gone to the library to learn anything useful, since all of the civilians and shinobi below Chunin were hiding in the underground bunkers. A few dark ninja, the Junin and Chunin, were guarding the bunkers, while the rest of the ninja guarded Wave's important buildings and watched the fights. This made a small hole in the security that the plant creation could use. He had read a short version of Wave's history. The island country was made by a missing Uzumaki ninja who used a powerful earth and water jutsu and then died on the same land to avoid being caught by his own people. The new island was close enough to the shore for people to notice it, so merchants and traders from water country moved there in droves. Since the land was big enough for everyone, it became a hub for trading of all kinds. Officially, it was called Wave Country because it was close to the ocean and waves often hit the shores. A few years later, Gato came to Wave and found the natural resources under the ground. He persuaded the Wave elders to let him make Wave his permanent home, but he went behind their backs and hired mercenaries to take over the island country by force. Wave didn't have any shinobi at the time. It was just a peaceful place to trade, but a week after Gato arrived, violence and chaos broke out there. During the Fat Man's rule, many children were left without parents, plants died, and sea life died out. People were so poor that they even thought about eating each other. Then Daku came along and saved them. Even though the Dark Shadows campaign was quiet, People had ideas about how he won. The history book said that he ran into a million ranked ninja and beat them all. Another part of the book started a rumor that Deku had fallen from the sky and destroyed Gato's stronghold. Still, it was true that the people of Wave were happy to be ruled by Deku's Great Master. The Great Master did a good job of running Wave. He started by using the few supplies to build 2 medium-sized boats that could take fish and rice out of Wave and sell them in a neutral village, like Hidden Waterfall or Hidden Darkness. Then Waterfall went to Deku and told him that the 4 small villages it was working with should all work together. That's when Naruto showed who he was. Most people thought the tall boy was in his late teens, but he hadn't told them his age up until this point. From the time that something called the 6 Minor Village Alliance was made in the office of the Wave Leader, it had been going up. Each more advanced village in the alliance sent Wave-skilled shinobi to do missions and run the shinobi and some of the civilian system until Wave could run things on its own. Relations between the 6 small villages were as good as ever, if not better, so it didn't surprise anyone that 2 trains had been built to connect the villages even more and move people and goods from one village to the next. On one side, the railroad started in marsh and went through Fang and some mountains to chill. On the other side, solid stone and iron were used to build a bridge over the mud and swamps around marsh to a secret entrance in Waterfall. From there, a track was built over the water to Wave. Even so, some people still preferred to travel by boat because that's what they were used to. People who needed to move quickly to an allied village still used trains a lot. Then, first with Konohagakure, a trade and military alliance was made where help would be given when it was needed. However, this didn't give the major village full control over any of the minor 6. The same thing was done with Sunagakure and Kiriagakure. Even the history books spread rumors that the leaders of the 6 villages were friends with Kumogakure. A possible future partnership between the two. It talked about how the minor 6 took over Hoshigakure after an unnecessary act of aggression. It also talked about how the Hoshi clan was partially added to the shinobi and civilian system. Wave's infrastructure, water, electricity, trade, and military were also talked about in the book, but Zetsu didn't care about that. The plant man went straight to the higher rank Fuinjutsu section of the library and looked for anything that could help him get through the seal borders of Wave. He wasn't able to find a copy of the seals that were tattooed on the inside of the sentry posts at the gates of outer and inner Wave, but he did find something else that was more valuable. A barrier ninjutsu that the Godem Azukage used to trap his enemies in a force field with him as the center so that no one could get out. He used this seal when Uzushio was attacked. Also, when he was finally held down, he sealed what was left of his self-defense ninjutsu with the same seal Danzo had on his chest, the reverse 4 symbol sealing. Zetsu put the reverse self-barrier ninjutsu in his pocket and moved on to find something that would help him beat the level 9.5 blonde seal master. He could tell that the fights were coming to an end and that the barrier would soon be put back up, so he quickly made 3 more barrier seals and left. Zetsu went all the way back to Hidden Rain to tell Pain what he had found, and as expected, the Rinnegan holder was not happy about it. The red-haired man did collect the barrier ninjutsu and seals and learn them by heart. It took him 2 days to learn the seal, even though it wasn't very complicated. His former sensei, Jiraiya of the Sannin, had taught his students the basics of Fuinjutsu. Nagato, Konan and Yahiko, their best friend who died, all learned from the Toad Sannin. Nagato's heart had become bad because of war and death. Even though he had learned ninjutsu in half an hour. Pain was sitting on his throne in the highest room of the Amikage Tower. He was looking out the wall-sized window at all the buildings in aim. The rain fell from the sky as if Kami were crying over all the bad things that had happened to the village and all the bad things that would happen in the future. Nagato closed his purple eyes with wavy lines and slowly opened them again. Now that he was sure of himself, his eyes were hard, and behind him, 6 things that looked like coffins opened up. His 6 paths of Pain walked out, and they looked at each other and then at Pain, who had called them. Large chakra-conducting pipes that were deep in the Rinnegan holder's back rose more than 6 feet into the air. They could feel the clear connection from Pain to the paths. Konan stood next to Pain and quietly walked to where her dead best friend's reanimated corpse was standing. Her face was blank when she saw that Pain still hadn't turned to anyone. His eyes were fixed outside the window, staring at everything and nothing at all. Pain rolled his neck and clenched his fingers before he finally said to the other silent but masked person in the room, "Bring him to me, Uchiha Madara." Obito nodded, knowing that as soon as the god entered the game, all the cards were out. Well, not all the cards yet. From his one Sharingan eye, he could see that the air was swirling, so he put his arm in the Kamui. He grabbed Naruto by the neck, pulled him back, and threw him face first onto the ground in front of Nagato. Right after letting go of the boy, the man held his head and hissed in pain. He had just realized that Naruto may have had one of his chakra-controlled destruction seals put into his body. He felt his control change and heard a horrible buzzing in his head, which kept him from seeing anything for a while until he forced control back to him. Naruto let out a painful groan as his face hit the ground. He had just realized that his captor had used up all of the chakra-controlled destruction seal he had put on him. He got up and looked around, but the room was too dark and dreary for him to fully understand who or what was there. When he heard his name, Uzumaki Naruto, he turned his head. The face of the person with the deep voice was hidden by the back of his chair or throne, but he did see long black rods coming out of the top. His hands were ready to move. "Depends on who's asking," he said, getting ready for a fight. "I am Lord Pain, and you have been a pain in my side for far too long," the person holding the chair's arms tightly said. "I will have your tailed beast, child, but I will rip it out of you last. You will watch everything you have built fall apart, everyone you love die, and you will feel pain." Naruto looked around the dark room with his blue eyes and his senses, and his seals told him that there were 8 people in the room. The boy closed his right fist and subtly got ready to shoot energy beams at his captors. "You and your annoying village may have beaten my shinobi," he said. Naruto turned around when he felt someone stand 5 feet in front of him, just outside his automatic defense range. It was an orange-haired man with purple rippled eyes. Kyuubi's eyes widened when he said, "But you can't beat a god." Naruto quickly looked down and saw that the man's hand was on the same level as his chest. Kurama yelled, "Kit, get down." But it was too late. Great push. With those words, Naruto was blasted out of the office, through solid wood and iron, and into the rain from the 6th floor of the building. Naruto woke up from his sleep when a heavy rain started to fall on him. He shook his head and moved his fingers, then his toes, and finally his neck to see where he was. The first thing he noticed was a huge hole in the roof, through which the famous aim rain was pouring. The second thing he realized was that he had literally crashed dinner. He was in the middle of the clean half of the family dining table. Thank goodness the blue iron bubble caught him in time, or he would have seriously hurt his back. The family of 7 was huddled in one corner of the room. Based on the way their kunai were shaking in their hands, it was likely that 5 of them were regular people and 2 of them were genin. The blonde seal master huffed and slowly got up, knowing that the only injury he had was a sore chest where the strange attack had hit him. The family of 7 was hiding behind the 2 scared genin. Naruto took a deep breath and ran his fingers through his wet hair. He smiled slowly at them and waved for them to calm down, but they didn't. He knew exactly what they were going through because he was a foreign ninja who had fallen from the sky and crashed through their dinner table. He rubbed his eyes, took his glasses off a seal on his neck, put them back on, and turned on the seal. The rain stopped making his vision blurry, and he could see their chakra networks. When he blinked twice, his chakra capacity, not his chakra network, changed from normal to heat vision and back again. "Hello," Naruto said with a wave. The tone he used when he said this, which was so calm and easy, made the 2 genin, who didn't look very special, lower their weapons just a little, but they quickly picked them back up. "Say what you want." "Wave, shinobi," one of the genin, probably a man, told the shinobi after looking at his forehead guard. "That won't interest you," he said as he pointed in that direction and put on his arm and shin guards. "You all need to calm down. Take it easy? You ruined dinner," yelled one girl to the other genin. Naruto raised a finger to answer, but his sense seals flared up. He quickly looked up and said, "Get down." Under his breath. "Why should we pay attention to you?" The blonde leader then put both hands over his head while lying on his back, and a hazy blue bubble covered him. The bubble grew and covered the whole house at the same time that a person with 4 arms and 2 faces fell from the sky. "Run. Now!" yelled the strange-looking shinobi as he hit the iron bubble with blows that broke bones. He clapped his hands, and the bubble pushed the attacker away. He flipped to his feet, and a hazy bubble curved into life under his feet. When they didn't listen, he groaned in frustration and jumped through the hole in the ceiling. A shadow clone came to life under him and ran at the family. The clone made more clones of itself and put the genin and their family on their backs, even though they were struggling. Just as the house fell down around their ears, the Naruto clones jumped out of it. The genin saw the original blonde jump over the orange-haired, four-armed attacker and hit him with his silver ropes, which made a crackling sound. The Asura path with 4 arms frowned a lot and fired missiles at the blonde who was jumping around. Naruto ran away from the explosions in a straight line, but he had to do a front flip over a dog with 3 heads. He wrinkled his eyebrows and thought, those eyes look familiar. Those are the eyes of my Two-san, Kit. Kurama grunted as he stood on his back legs and watched his holder dodge and flip over attacks from 2 paths of pain, who didn't know that was their name. Two-san? Naruto grumbled and jumped over an outstretched arm from the Asura path. He landed on the arm and ran to the shocked path, surprised that the coating of chakra on his feet was keeping him from getting electrocuted. When he got to the end of the path, he slammed his hands together. A powerful force pushed him and the path back, shaking the ground. A half-snake, half-tiger creature bit down on his body while he was in the air, but he exploded into chakra smoke, leaving a log for the creature to eat. The real Naruto was hiding in the rubble of the destroyed house. He made 2 more clones and sent them running at the 2 with orange hair. I didn't just show up out of nowhere, you know. I was born, or rather made. That's something we'll talk about later. What do you know about those eyes? Those were the eyes of my Two-san, the sage of 6 paths. The Rinnegan is the name for them. I didn't spend too much time with him, but I learned what they could mostly do. Like the first guy, the Diva Path, one of the most important skills is being able to control gravity. The second guy, who is on the Asura Path, could also add mechanical parts to his body. One is that he could call up immortal animals of any kind, and sometimes even people like the third guy. This is called the Animal Path. The Preta Path is another one that can take in chakra and make barriers. The Two Tails once told me that he had a power that let him read people's minds by touching them and take their souls out of their bodies. This is the human path. The last thing I heard was that he can bring anyone back to life. My brothers and sisters heard that he has another powerful ability, which they call the Naraka Path. I don't know what it does, but they say that he can heal anyone or even bring them back to life with it. Okay, now I need to pick the best ones. Naruto had to roll away from a stretched metal fist that hit his cover. His blue bubble protected him from the debris, and the Seal Master fought back by absorbing the rain into his right hand, the Chakra Beam Seal, and making a tentacle made of damaging water. He then used his lightning affinity to make what he would call his Chakra Shock Whip. He swung his arm at the man with 4 arms, and it was easily caught. He opened his right hand, and a paper seal shot through the water and stuck to the man's hand. Chains made of wrought iron came out of the seal and held the man down. Naruto ran full speed towards his opponent, but an invisible gravity attack threw him back before he could cut off his head. The blonde used his whip to grab a building's edge and slow his fall. 4 more red-haired opponents fell down. Naruto could tell which one could control gravity, which one had augmented body parts, and which one could call animals. The 4th one grabbed his chains and sucked out the chakra that had made them, freeing his orange-haired friend. The last one should be the Preta Path. Naruto's mind was full of ideas and plans as he looked down the 4 paths. With his electrical water whip ready, he held up a half-ram hand seal with his left hand and said, "Multiple shadow clones." Dozens of clones came to life next to him and ran towards the 4. As expected, a gravitational attack pushed them back, but they had to jump away when a stubborn clone exploded from the ground and threw a windmill shuriken at the animal path. The stubborn clone flipped through a few. Shadow Shuriken technique. The single windmill shuriken turned into 10 and whirled through the rain at them. The 2-headed dog blocked the attack, and the half-snake, half-tiger 2 jumped out of the ground and bit down on the clone, which turned into chakra smoke and roared to the sky. The boy felt a terrible force pull him forward, and the Diva Path grabbed him by the neck. It said, "Do not fight, you will lose." Defeat? I don't know what that word means. When the hand around Naruto's neck tightened, he gritted his teeth and winced. How did he even get past his blue bubble? Child, you were fighting against a god. Nothing, not even your seals, will save you, the Preta Path said as he walked towards Naruto from the side of the Diva Paths. I'm not so sure about that, Naruto said. With a snap of his fingers, his hazy blue iron shield again pushed the paths away. It wasn't as strong as when he slapped his hands, but it did the job. This time, however, the whole arm of the Diva Path tore off, so it stayed tight around Naruto's neck. The blonde boy used his water whip to pull the arm off, and then he saw 2 more people with orange hair fall from the leader's tower. After one of the newcomers muttered a jutsu, a demonic head popped out of the ground, and a long tongue wrapped around the one-armed diva path and pulled him into its mouth. That must be the path to Naraka. Hi, it seems like something the Rinnegan can do, he said. The sight of the kind of Hell's Head repairing the diva path was very disturbing. While the Asura and human paths ran at him, the animal path kept calling more and more strange animals to attack. Watching the animals in the orange-haired shinobi wash over Naruto was like seeing a tsunami hit a small rock. Deku closed his eyes and tried to find Naruto by feeling a tingle in his stomach seal. Anything? Mole asked nervously. Her mole mask was perched on top of her head, so Frog, Mole, Zabuza, Haku, Rat, and Deku could see how big her soft brown eyes were. She was clenching and releasing her fists nervously behind her back, away from their eyes, and trying to calm her heart at the same time. Nothing, it seems like Naruto's chakra-controlled destruction seals are blocking our connection. Do you think that Naruto-sama would just leave on his own? Haku asked while wearing his Wave Hunter ninja mask on his head. As he asked this, the person who used Ice Release frowned in thought. Frog said, Naruto-sama never leaves without telling me, which was true. It was embarrassing enough that Frog always knew where Naruto was, even if he was in the bathroom. What about the seal of reverse summoning he has on us? Mole asked, making sure to keep her voice from shaking so no one would notice. She was able to do this. It works for us if the connection is strong, but my connection is being blocked by something. So that leaves it if he calls us. Everyone there had a reverse summoning seal for each other that was connected through Naruto, the hub point, so most people would call him the link between his inner circle. It worked by the summoner thinking of the person they wanted to call and holding out their hands at the desired location. The person being called would be alerted, and Naruto would connect the two by a core reverse summoning seal between his shoulder blades when he heard it click. The seal was under his blue iron bubble shield, and the person being called would either be fired or dropped out, depending on the summoner's goal. The seal wasn't as hard to figure out as people might think. It was based on the summoning seal that Orochimaru wore on his arm, but the kanji were changed to match the people in the inner circle. Why doesn't he want our help? I'm sure he's in trouble. He seems to attract trouble like a freaking magnet, Zabuza grunted from his seat across the room. His fingers were folded over his chest, and the Kabikari was leaning against the wall next to him. From what I know about Naruto-sensei, he only asks for help when he's up against someone he can't beat with his ninjutsu, Deku said, and everyone filled in what he meant. Naruto was a very independent person who liked to do things on his own before asking for help. He wasn't exactly proud, but he was very independent, even when he wanted Deku or Kyuubi to give him strength. With all his seals and jutsu knowledge, it was easy to see why. Naruto had seals to keep his feet firmly on the ground without using much chakra, seals to help him jump higher than any chakra-enhanced limb could, a seal that would strengthen his arms so that when he punched, it hurt a lot more than it should, and many more seals and secrets he wasn't in a hurry to tell. The leader of the blonde wave could do a lot on his own. Haku asked Deku-sama, who was standing with his arms crossed by the door, what do we do now? We don't know how long he'll be gone, so we need to make sure no one finds out. I'll henge into him to keep up appearances, he said, then easily changed into their blonde master. Then we have to be ready for anything, he said, and they all nodded and flew out of the room. The dark shadow sat down in Naruto's desk and waved his hand. 4 dark shinobi flashed in front of him on their knees and said, this is a triple S rank secret. If this gets out, you'll die. The 4 Black Ops members took a deep breath, nodded, and lowered their heads. Then, Naruto looked through the mission requests on his desk and gave them an S-rank mission with the question, do you accept? Raven quickly read the mission and said, hi, Naruto-sama, with a curt nod. Dismissed, and they left the office in a flash. Naruto chose the best shinobi in his dark force, the ones who were known for being good at something, and put them on a team. Mole, who was also the deputy dark commander, was in charge of the team and was also the deputy dark commander. Naruto put them through the same trust test as Rat, Mole, and Frog. He did this by giving them critical information about the village, leaving huge amounts of money around, forgetting to close important documents, and doing a few other things. They had passed, making them the first important Hoshi clan members to lose their restraint seals. The Hoshi clan head and the Hoshi genin would be the next to lose their seals, but it would take a few more months for the rest to stop being watched. Naruto walked to the big window in his office and looked out at the growing country around the leader's tower. He put his hands behind his back and stared at everything and nothing. He told Mole and the rest of the dark team, which Mole was a part of, to go to Hidden Sound and watch Orochimaru, the Snake Sanin's hidden village until they were called back. This was so they could check the borders for any holes or leaks and learn as much as they could about the new hidden village without getting caught. This mission was rated S rank because it was likely that Orochimaru would find them. Orochimaru was also a seal master, but he wasn't as good as Naruto. Naruto turned around to go back to the real Naruto's desk and do his work. Naruto was starting to wonder if it was because he was an Uzumaki that he was always getting into trouble. First, Sound Ninja tried to take him during the Sound invasion, then Shukaku the one-tailed raccoon, then Kisame and Itachi, then Orochimaru, then Deidara and Sasori, and now, Lord Pain, the Rinnegan holder. Even though the challenges weren't bad, they just kept getting harder and harder. This made him wonder, who was stronger than a god? Naruto grunted as a strong arm hit him in the stomach and pushed him out of the way of a charging Red Bull. He drew some Uzumaki energy from his well and grabbed the creature's horns. He then got on its back and used his electric water whip to cut its throat. He thought he had killed the animal path and the Asura path more than 5 times, but the Naraka path kept bringing them back to life. The last thing that made Naruto snap was when another universal pull jerked him backwards towards the Diva path in a harsh way. The blonde seal master roared and flipped backwards in the air towards the path faster than the orange-haired man could have expected. Naruto's sandaled foot hit the man in the face, and Naruto stuck his fist through the man's stomach with his whip. The Asura path ran to him, but stopped when Naruto's body started to bubble. The boy grunted and hunched his shoulders. He was out of breath from all the work he had done and how quickly he had done it. At that moment, red demonic chakra started to bubble up on his skin, his wet blonde hair rose into the air like a flame, and his cool, sky-blue eyes changed into the red sclera of a fox. The water whip in his right hand broke, and he clenched both of his hands as he stared at the 6 paths. The Asura path was the first to run towards him. Naruto hopped away from the blows that broke the ground and the missiles that were fired at him many times. When he found an opening, he dragged his left foot back on the ground as he hopped away again, and the path was caught in a seal trap. As the iron-augmented man fought with all his strength to get out, blue light lit up around him. Naruto ran straight at him, and 2 tails exploded from behind him, wrapping around the man so tightly that he couldn't move his arms. This gave Naruto the chance to jump onto the man's shoulders and smash his fist into the middle of the orange man's head, killing him again. This time, Naruto put his left hand over the dead path, and he was easily sealed into a storage seal on his pinky finger. The boy snarled like a tiger and his teeth reached halfway down his chin. He was in the 3rd stance of the armadillo fighting style, with both feet together and his arms in ready positions in front of him. The ground around him cracked from the huge effort it took to hold him up. Behind him, 2 more tails grew, and he shot forward, rolling on the ground like a bowling ball that picked up speed and debris, which stuck to his back and head. Naruto kept going down the Naraka path even though the paths went in different directions. A tail lashed out to stop a Red Bull, and another slammed straight into its mouth and burned it with demon chakra. He let more and more chakra out of his boy to burn through more animals that ran to protect the path. He tore a clean hole through an animal that looked like a lizard. He was stopped in his tracks by a strong force of attraction behind him. He slammed 3 tails into the ground to slow down, but the Preta path landed on the red spinning ball of death and started sucking out the Kyuubi chakra. Naruto growled from inside the ball and slapped his hands together. The path was thrown off, and the force that was pulling him towards the Diva path stopped. Naruto bounced in his armadillo ball towards the Preta path just as the man put up a barrier to stop him. Naruto opened the mouth of the ball, which made him look like he was grinning in a nightmare, and swallowed the path, ball and all. The ball got bigger, and there were signs of a fight. Inside, Naruto stayed in his ball position as tendrils of demon chakra hit the barrier from behind him. He frowned when he saw that they weren't making a dent, so he did what he did best, seals. He opened his arms and touched the walls of the ball from the inside. Paper flew out of his sleeves and into the walls. The tendrils shook and started spitting out paper seal after paper seal. Iron chains were wrapped around the barrier ball that Preta path was holding up with a lot of effort, draining his chakra. The path groaned under the weight of hundreds of iron chains as thick as his hand, and he finally gave in. He tried to drink up the demon chakra around him, but Naruto saw his chance and cut off his arms with the tendrils. The path was quickly set in stone on his little finger. When it stopped growing and the signs of struggle stopped, the ball of demonic chakra was as tall as a 2-story house. The dead Yahiko stayed calm, but his Rinnegan eyes glared at the ball. He put his palm near the surface and muttered, "Almighty push." The animal path called forth a gorilla horse hybrid that used a warhammer to smash its weapon into the ball. When the ball broke under the pressure, tentacles of demon chakra shot out in all directions. One of them grabbed the strange creature and cut its head clean off. The tentacles moved like a twisted octopus with 6 main tentacles that also served as tails. They carried the red ball around. Inside the ball, Naruto's whole body was on fire from the Kyuubi chakra. He opened his right hand slowly, like a flower, and moved it forward. A big hole opened up in front of him so everyone could see him, and he shot a long beam of lightning and fire at the diva path. The attack tore a thick grove in the ground after the path as it ran away, but a turtle landed behind it to protect it, but the lightning fire combination was known for the diva path spun around on his feet and made a barrier, stopping the thick beam of fiery lightning until a 7th tail shot up from the ground and threw him back into the leader's tower. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki took a deep breath to make sure he was still in charge. His spine-tingling red eyes carefully looked around for the other 4 paths and the leader of them. When a warhammer hit his protective demon chakra shell, he grunted and his senses told him it was another gorilla horse summon. He turned around and blasted the creature with a stream of lightning fire, which destroyed it. He reached out as far as his sense seals could, and when he found the other paths, he gave a small smile. He forced the size of his demonic armadillo shell down until it was as tall as an average man. He slowly rolled around, occasionally killing summons that jumped out of nowhere, until he was pulled backwards again. He grunted in frustration and spun in a tight circle to the diva path. The path put up a shield around him, which stopped the spinning attack. From behind the shield, he started sucking demon chakra. "Child, you can't win. Just watch me," Naruto muttered from deep inside and moved his arms so they were in front of his chest, having to push his knees away a bit to do so, and began flipping through a medium-length set of hand seals as he felt demon chakra being pulled out of him. Water and earth release. Combination jutsu. Demon sludge dragon. Behind him the muddy ground opened up and a horned dragon roared out, leaping over Naruto and diving down to the path. Chakra could be easily taken away from the attack, but this had a small side effect. Another dragon flew out of a crack in the ground to stop a 3-headed dog with the animal path on its head. The dragon hit the dogs with its head and pushed them back. This threw off the balance of the path and let Naruto roll to the side to follow it. The dog heads bit the dragon's neck, and the dragon exploded into mud, blinding the animal long enough for Naruto to swallow the path. Naruto tried to follow the path as it went through a set of hand seals, but a red bull that the path had called out scared him out of his shell. As he crashed into the side of a building, his shell broke apart around him. His red sclera eyes widened when he sensed life in the building. Dozens of clones sprung to life around him and landed on the floor, running into the crumbling building while the real Naruto ran back into the fight. He ran to the side when a green-purple python as thick as his whole body lashed at him and jumped high into the air with his palm leveled down at the animal path. 7 tails. "Chakra beam," he said, and a red beam curved out of his palm and converged into a single, sharp point that shot down to its target. The path turned, but the beam followed him like a tail, weaving through the ground and right into the iron grip of a shadow clone. The clone glared at him with long, menacing teeth that glistened and exploded into chakra smoke. Wrought iron Jinchuriki restraint seals surrounded the animal path and drained any chakra it had. The path wiggled weakly on the ground to ask for help, but the paths were too busy trying to avoid an attack from a chakra beam that looked like a worm and was weaving through the ground. The diva path jumped in front of the human path and took the full force of the drilling attack, which is something that not even Orochimaru would do. The eyes of the path shone in a scary way. Naruto was pulled towards the man by the diva's next jutsu, universal pull. A solid punch hit him in the chest as the diva said his next jutsu, almighty push. He was again thrown away, but not before the diva's fist had a little surprise in it. The man's eyes grew wide, and he shook his arm and face frantically to get rid of the explosive tags that were multiplying and spreading all over it. Naruto gasped for air from where he was stuck in the wall, but he had a proud smile on his face. He whispered, boom, and the explosion shook Amigakure to its foundations. People who had been saved by his clones from the crumbling building were amazed to see the smoke rising into the air. Naruto got out of the hole in the wall because he was tired. He fell and landed on his feet. He ran into the smoke, trusting that his seal-enhanced glasses would help him see, and kneed the Naraka path in the face before it could call the King of Hell to bring the dead path back to life. He made a ball of wind in his right hand and drove it through the stunned path, not thinking that it would switch to the human path. He quickly blocked off the badly broken path. He looked down at where he had blown up the diva path and frowned when he saw his wrought iron seals on a pile of ash and body parts. Sneaky, he said, crossing his 7 tails over him as another gravitational attack hit him. He grabbed the ground and put a seal on the broken animal path. The fighters were causing a lot of damage in aim, and it looked like Pain didn't care if anyone got hurt. Naruto's red sclera eyes got bigger when he saw that his own chakra beam attack was coming back at him. He used his tails as a shield again, but he was being pushed back very slowly, so he used his tree root seals to hold himself in place. His tails bent under the attack and sent it back to the person who threw it. The person who threw it easily took it into his system. Diva made a few hand seals that said, "Summoning Jutsu." Conan, and the purple-haired woman threw a bunch of paper shuriken at Naruto, who jumped out of the way. She ran at the younger Junin, and the two of them fought quickly with taijutsu, with the woman being careful not to touch the demon chakra that was coming from Naruto's skin. She had thick pieces of paper on her fists and punched at him. Naruto moved away and kicked her in the shoulder, but the woman put up a wall of paper to block the attack. When the paper hit her and Naruto, it exploded and covered both of them. The boy blocked her snap kick with his forearm and rolled under her right hook. He then ran his hands along the ground to hold her in place. He hit her in the back of the head 4 times with such force that each punch broke the ground. She couldn't even move or fall over because the seal had frozen her in place. After the last blow, she knocked her out completely. She was still standing, but her eyes were closed and her breathing was even. Naruto said, "I'm tired of this." "So am I," Yahiko said. "I will end this now." He raised both arms to the sky, and the Naraka path stopped getting chakra. The path fell forward onto his face like a tree. "Chibuki Tenshi," he said. "What in the hell are you doing? You're ruining your own place to live." Naruto yelled as he jumped from one flying rock to the next, making a growing satellite in the sky. The boy could already feel it pulling him, so he threw a wired kunai at it. It got stuck in the ground, and he pulled as hard as he could, but the ground broke. As more rocks flew into the air, Yahiko said, "They are just seeing what true power is." He didn't care that the people in Shinobi of AIM were also being lifted into the air and giving him horrified looks. Naruto muttered a curse, and hundreds of shadow clones sprang to life and ran away from him. They jumped from rock to rock, catching people and switching places with rocks until they fell to the ground. A clone grabbed the back of Conan's cloak and pulled her back, away from where 2 rocks were coming together. The clone quickly tied the woman up with ninja wire and threw the end of the kunai to where the people of AIM were standing. The weapon hit the ground with a thud, and the purple-haired woman flapped like a flag without a metal pole to hold her up. "All because he wants me to feel pain," Naruto muttered. Kurama muttered, twisted, as if the chaos going on around him didn't bother him. Naruto let the satellite pull him in, and when he landed, he dug his 7 tails into the rock face like a mole. He, too, went into the satellite and called as much demon chakra as he could to his hands. When his palms started to burn, he slapped them together and said, "Push." His 7 tails came out of the satellite, and his now hazy red bubble hummed with energy. A powerful explosion shook the air, and the clones on the ground had to form Earth Release, world's greatest Earth defense, to protect any AIM citizens who couldn't. Seal's attack defense by itself wouldn't have done anything, but the fact that his 7 tails punched holes in the satellite to weaken its pulling force made the attack explode into smaller rocks that fell back to Earth. As soon as the biggest rocks stopped falling, the clones let go of the Earth Jutsu. Everyone saw Naruto spread his tails as far as he could, and an 8th one joined him to slow his fall. It was like looking at a frightening and alluring creature sent by Kami that had the power to beat their god, Pain. They couldn't believe what they saw above them. Naruto was surrounded by fire, his tails were catching as much air as they could to slow him down, his blood-red eyes were staring down with hatred at the path that had destroyed more than half of his own village, and the black orb in his right hand was getting bigger. As his tails got even longer and more curved, like a work of art, the rain stopped. It looked like the whole village, where they were standing, was holding its breath to see what the blonde boy would do next. "Oh no," all of the shadow clones said at once. They quickly built rock walls from the ground, making a solid mile-long wall that covered the crowd, and put their hands on the walls. They sent out a spiral of reinforcement seals from their hands to stop the shockwave that was about to hit. Naruto put the ball of inky black demonic chakra over his head and growled, "I'll show you pain." The ball grew until it was about the same size as the leader's tower in Hidden Rain, and the Diva Path refused to move because it didn't have enough chakra to absorb the tailed beast ball. The single attack hit its single target, sending shockwaves through everyone and scattering debris. Super spinning tailed beast ball. Naruto's shout could be heard over the chaos that the beast ball was making. A backlash hit the leader's tower behind Diva, which was first stripped of all its stone, then its wood, and finally its support beams. The building fell apart, but the attack was aimed at the Diva Path. The ball was pushed down and spun in a circle, grinding against the Diva Path's arms. The tired Diva Path did everything he could to pull the deadly chakra out of the ball and make it his own. The chakra was too much for him, and he was slammed into the ground. His chest and head were soon ground into dust, leaving only his arms and legs. Naruto could see some chakra in the rain break like glass, and that's when it hit him. He had been inside a self-barrier, probably on the Naraka path, the most valuable path. That must be why Deku or Mole weren't fighting with him the whole time. As the ball stopped rolling and slowly broke apart, Naruto's right hand sucked the rest of it back into his chakra store. Just outside the huge crater, his tails got stuck in the ground and gently set him down in front of the headless path. As he slowly looked up from the hole he had dug at the broken tower, he kept a straight face. His tails worked like hands and pulled him out of the crater and carried him to the building that had fallen down. He was gently dropped again, and this time he let his senses guide him through the rubble. He used his tails to pick up big chunks of dirt without thinking about it. Naruto stopped and pushed off a piece of wall with his two tails. He then got down on one knee next to the broken body of the crippled Rinnegan holder. The man closed his eyes and took deep breaths. The Jinchuriki sat down next to him with his legs crossed. His guard was still very high, but his glasses showed that Pain had almost no chakra left. The man who held the Rinnegan was unhealthy and had piercings on his chest and back. The chakra rods had broken off. Did anyone die? Pain asked, still with his eyes shut. As a response, a clone popped up in the crowd of citizens, which shocked most of them but didn't make them grab their weapons. The blonde clones had saved them from being completely wiped out, as the crumbling seal and forced rock walls showed. The real Naruto shook his head and said, "No one was hurt, but the place needs some work." "You fought well, Naruto," Pain sighed deeply. "Likewise. Can I at least tell you my story before you kill me, Naruto?" he asked, even though he knew that Naruto had a seal ready to cut off his head at any moment. "What's your story?" Naruto cocked his head. "Everyone has a story," Nagato said. He finally opened his Rinnegan eye and gave the blonde powerhouse a weak smile. Naruto shrugged and took a seal out of his sleeve. He put it on Pain's bare chest. Simple silver ropes held the older man down, but Naruto tapped the seal a few times so the man couldn't move, but the chakra drain wasn't there, even though the chakra levels were still low. "I have to be careful, you know," he said. Pain laughed out loud and shook his head, saying, "I get it. I would do the same thing if I were in your place." "You said something about telling a story. Of course, you can see that I've always wanted peace. Imigakure had never been at peace until I came and beat Hanzo the Salamander. Before that, I was a child with parents and more than enough friends. Even though the war was making everything worse, I was happy. But when my pet dog died, I knew everything was falling apart." Obito stood at the edge of rain, fuming with anger. Everything he had built fell apart right in front of his eyes, and that blonde rat was to blame. He was angry just thinking about Naruto. Even though a lot of chakra had been thrown around, he didn't attack Naruto right away because he could see with his Sharingan eye that Naruto was still at full strength even though a lot of chakra had been thrown around. He didn't just kill the blonde kid with a well-timed Kamui because he wasn't sure if Naruto had his chakra-controlled destruction seal. He could still feel his chakra control change a little bit, but he still had a good hold on it. No one knew how many more Naruto had, though. Another factor was that Naruto was still working on the seal that could destroy Sharingans. He had read Zetsu's report on what the seal had done to Danzo, and he had seen Mole use the seal against Itachi to see what it could do. Obito was pulled into a Kamui, but in his mind, he already had a plan. It was time to start his public campaign with both eyes on Sharingan, or he always had the Rinnegan.
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.